buscando más de lo normal. Todos mis sentidos van pidiendo más.
Hello and welcome to Justice, live from the nation's capital. I'm Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us, and thanks for making justice #1 again last Saturday. Dr. Ben Carson, Coach Lou Holtz, David Bossie, and more on deck, plus one of the president's top spokespeople standing by live. But first, my opening statement. The FBI needs a complete overhaul, a complete cleansing. In any company or organization that runs afoul of its mission or is tainted by corruption and politics, the CEO and the board of directors would go. Likewise, the utter failure of the FBI in September and January regarding shooter Nikolas Cruz is so monumental that the same rule must apply. The killing of young innocents, their teachers and coaches, gunned down in a school, a place that should be a haven in a heartless world, lays at the hands of the FBI. And although shooter Cruz pulled the trigger, the potential slaughter, twice reported to the FBI, could have been prevented had they bothered to lift a finger. A concerned citizen sees this on YouTube, quote, "I want to be a professional school shooter." And that citizen is so alarmed, he takes the time to call the FBI. They take the complaint and do nothing. But after 17 killed and 14 wounded, the FBI has the unmitigated gall to walk up to a microphone and say,
there was not enough PII to positively identify the subject, so it got closed at that point.
Close it out? Say what? You had no further identifying information? Are you not the FBI? There are only 13 Nikolas Cruzes in the country. To support this lame excuse, the FBI trots out messengers briefed with the FBI talking points.
The FBI is very limited in what it can do with this type of information. They're looking for federal crimes that they can prosecute. On its face, this single posting does not give you that. You're not going to be able to take that to a prosecutor and say, if I prove who posted this, will you charge them? The answer is no.
Continues by saying FBI agents, bless them, are working within their guidelines, adding they can't follow someone for protected First Amendment rights. Really? Working within their guidelines? Do the guidelines tell them to ignore school shooters or threats to kill? Isn't the job of an FBI special agent, and by the way, they're all special agents, isn't their job to investigate? You really want to talk about guidelines as we bury our children? A primer. Google, which owns YouTube, removed Cruz's message. The FBI could have issued a preservation order to save the electronic footprint of Cruz. Even if Google deleted Cruz's threat, it would be easy to find him, since YouTube and Google require an email address and cell phone information that allows them to find other postings of Cruz, a pattern of behavior, as well as his IP address. But the FBI does nothing. And now the FBI has the chutzpah to run in front of the cameras with the Broward County Sheriff's Office to, quote, support them and give them every resource they need. How about you assist them before the tragedy? And even more alarming, on January 5th, the call comes in to the FBI's tip line from a person close to Cruz, providing information about gun ownership, his desire to kill people, erratic behavior, the cutting of his own wrist, his dysfunctional home life, eerily predicting the horrific shooting about to occur in 5 weeks. Everyone seemed to know Cruz would do this. Everyone, it seems, but the FBI. And as the outrage mounts, Director Christopher Wray says, we deeply regret the additional pain caused by the FBI's failure to investigate the January tip. You regret the additional pain? How about you regret that you didn't stop the massacre, that you did nothing to prevent bloodshed in a school, that you didn't lift a finger to investigate? Regret? How about you regret the fact that even though you race to the cameras and you think you're the big dogs in law enforcement, you can't even do what any cop from any town in this country would be smart enough to do. And your chutzpah knows no bounds. My sources tell me the FBI had a call with the victims' families to say, we want you to know we're putting protocols in place to make sure this doesn't happen again. You're going to make sure it doesn't happen again? Tell me how that helps me as I bury my child shot in the head, as I look in the bedroom of my child knowing that he or she will never come home again. And now you're going to investigate? If we know anything about you, you're going to lie, deny, delete emails, do anything you need to protect yourselves. I would add one thing to Governor Rick Scott's demand that Director Wray go, and that is that the entire upper echelon, the whole top layer of the FBI, go. For more than 3 decades as an elected DA with my own investigators, I worked with the FBI and watched as they fought real cops to take away our cases. The FBI runs roughshod over local law enforcement in this country, and don't you buy for 1 minute that they are one happy family working with local police. Local police are the real cops, the ones with their ears to the ground and their gumshoe to the pavement. They're the ones who solve crime. And so as hundreds of FBI agents chase Russians to create a non-existent Trump-Russia collusion and work the fake Hillary email investigation, or should I say matter, they ignore credible tips loaded with probable cause. As people like Peter Strzok and Lisa Page carry on their affair thinking they're going to change the course of history, as Andrew McCabe, handling both the Clinton case and the Trump matter, collect hundreds of thousands of dollars for his wife's campaign, real justice is thwarted. And don't give me this, we don't have enough resources or anyone can make a mistake. You wouldn't know a crime if it's staring you in the face. Admit it. You've screwed up on so many cases, it's hard to find out when you didn't. The Boston bombers, 4 people dead with countless having lost limbs or eyesight because of your BS line that the threat wasn't specific enough. The Fort Hood massacre, the Orlando Pulse nightclub shooting, the San Bernardino massacre, the attacks of 9/11. You were involved in every one of them. But you're so territorial, so selfish, so politicized, so focused on headlines, so full of yourselves that you refuse to even share information with other agencies. Even the New York Times says pervert Dr. Larry Nassar was on your radar almost 3 years ago. And what did you do? Nothing. Who did you notify? No one. And it's estimated another 40 young children were victimized by Nassar. And when confronted with this atrocity and blatant disregard for our children, the FBI says the safety and well-being of our youth is a top priority. Really? Try selling that to the grieving families and parents in Parkland, Florida. At least Nassar's victims are still alive. So maybe the FBI thinks they're protecting children. And of course, there are good men and women in the FBI. But they're marginalized. They're not advanced. The power is in the clique at the top. This FBI was stained and politicized by Mr. Holier-than-thou Jim Comey. But the seeds were sowed by former FBI Director Bob Mueller, the one now investigating President Trump. It's time to stop this charade. Time to return the FBI to its original mission. And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook page, Twitter, and Instagram, hashtag Judge Jeanine. And joining me now with reaction to my opening statement and much more, White House Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley. All right, Hogan, how are you?
I'm fine.
Sorry about that.
No.
Now, Rick Scott, governor, says Christopher Wray has to go. You heard how I feel. What say you?
There was no question there was a systematic failure at the FBI. We all know it. Director Wray came out and said it was his fault, his mistake, and it is so sad and so tragic that this mass shooting, this unspeakable tragedy, could have been prevented. No question about it. They failed at every level, and they tell you to see something and say something, and that's fine. Someone did see something, someone did say something, but no one at the FBI did anything. And that's what's key.
Okay, so that's what's key. What are the consequences? What are the sanctions? Who pays? I don't want to hear again, it's a lesson learned or we're going to investigate, because I don't believe them.
Right. FBI Director Wray was put in this position not only to clean up the politics at the highest level, right, to get rid of this bias, but also to fix problems like this. And clearly, there was a failure there. Director Wray is going to make changes. I understand there is a top-to-bottom review and audit here, but no question something has to be done within the FBI to keep this from happening again.
I don't buy it. With all due respect, I got to tell you, this is not enough. I don't want to hear, we're going to look at it. I'll tell you where Wray has failed. Wray didn't tell us whether it was a human failure of the guy who took the information in June, the one who failed to send it to the Miami field office, right, or whether it was a problem with the system, the way it's designed. So Wray isn't up front with us right now.
Well, this is unacceptable to the president, and we have to know what happened here, and I know they're in the middle of this investigation. What happened
once they screwed up? Hogan, they screwed up.
No question. No question. And heads have to roll. No
Whose
question.
head?
Well, I don't know, because I don't work at the FBI. That's something they're going to have to figure out. But we are monitoring this situation. There is no doubt that the president and his staff is incensed that this occurred. He is furious that this was allowed to happen. And when you know something that is preventable like this, 100% preventable, this cannot happen again.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you, my viewers and the American people are tired of the politics in the FBI.
No question.
The FBI is a tainted, politicized agency. And unless and until we see some changes, as opposed to we need to do better, then nobody's going to be happy. All right, I want to move on to the Russian investigation now, or the Russian indictment. I believe it was 12:35 yesterday. The Department of Justice, Rod Rosenstein, announces that they're going to have a press conference at 1:15. That's less than 45 minutes. Right. They announce that 13 Russians have been indicted. So what's new?
Well, there are a couple of takeaways from this that I think a lot of the American people didn't know, because they've been hearing this live for the better part of a year and a half. This investigation began in 2014. These Russian people coming into our country and meddling with our election happened in 2014 under President Barack Obama, number one. Number two, it's clear. Now we know for a fact there is no collusion between President Trump, candidate Trump, or the campaign and any Russian actor. That's also key. But third is, it didn't affect the outcome. Now we know for a fact.
Of the election.
Didn't affect the outcome of the election at all. And those three things, I think, are new for the American people, because, quite frankly, now we know they were trying to sow seeds of chaos and disrupt the very core of our democracy. The president was outraged when he heard what they had done in the election. And we cannot allow this type of thing to happen again.
Hogan, you're not a neophyte in this business of press conferences, and neither am I.
Right.
In 40 minutes, the FBI, with the DAG, the Deputy Attorney General, decides they're going to announce the Russian indictments. No one's been arrested. Everybody's in Russia. Why so fast? You want to know my opinion?
I would love to hear your opinion.
Because the FBI was found to be at fault, and they needed to step over it and overshadow it with the announcement of an indictment that said nothing.
Well, I can't speak to that, because I don't know if they were trying to change the news cycle or not. But what I can say is, finally, now we know, after all these allegations for a year, that there was no collusion between this president and Russia. Now we can move on and continue to govern this country.
Hogan Gidley, thanks so much.
Thank you so much
tonight. I appreciate it. And Dr. Ben Carson and Lou Holtz are my special guests tonight, with a exclusive interview on how they're teaming up to help inner city kids. Plus, Tim Clemente is a former FBI agent. He has powerful insight on the Bureau's handling or mishandling of the Florida shooting case and the missed signs along the way. You don't want to miss this one. It's next on Justice.
This program is brought to you by SIG.
This is part of it. This is what happens. You handled it well. Thanks.
The Americans final season premieres March 28th on FX.
Welcome back to this special Justice live from D.C. and to more on the stunning revelations in the Florida school massacre that the FBI admits to mishandling specific tips about the gunman. Here with his unique perspective on all of this is former FBI Special Agent Tim Clemente, who joins me now. All right, Tim, we know that the January 5th call to the hotline was very damning. It was loaded with probable cause. If you were an FBI Special Agent and they gave you the name of the individual, how many guns he had, the fact that he was cutting himself, the fact that he threatened to shoot up a school, the fact that he's from a dysfunctional family, and I can go on and on, what would you do?
I would be forced as an FBI agent to immediately react, notify local authorities to probably go there with me, because sometimes it's better to have a uniform presence there because FBI is in plain clothes. So that would be the minimum that would be done. Generally, when a duty agent takes information like that, there's a supervisor that looks at it. There's somebody there's a check and balance system. Somebody else looks at it. Hey, I got this call. This is the information. And that person would say, okay, we need to notify the Miami division immediately if it came from outside the division. Apparently, it did come from outside the division, because Director Wray has said it was never sent to Miami. Okay. So that means it may have come into Washington, D.C. headquarters or something like that.
But what they have now, Tim, what they have is, and Jim Comey put this in place, he's got his fingerprints all over everything. They have an 800 number. Okay. Where anybody who wants to report something to the FBI, instead of calling the field office, they call the 800 number. The 800 number is supposed to send it out to the appropriate field office. What Director Wray doesn't tell us is whether the individual never reported it, forget do any footwork, or whether it was the system that isn't set up to kick it to Miami. Yeah, the fact that he didn't tell us, what does that tell you?
It tells me, A, either they're hiding something that's embarrassing, or B, they haven't gotten to the bottom of this yet. Those are the only two possibilities.
Wait a minute. Wait, Tim, let's be straight with each other. You were a cop before you were an FBI agent, right? You know how to investigate crime.
I do, yes.
Okay. Now, if this happened, if the guy didn't report it, all right, the guy who takes the call, you call him in, you ask him, what the hell happened?
Exactly.
All right? Or if he can prove that he reported it, then the question is,
who did you report it to?
Right.
Well, who did you report it to?
And where is the system?
Yeah, it may have been one agent took the call, put it on paper, sent it up the chain, and the chain
put it into the computer.
Put it into, that's what I mean. But that would still be a paper trail, but it would be electronic, and it goes to someone else. Someone else looks at that, vets that information, and then is supposed to make the call on send this immediately to Miami or put this in a zero file. It's not important. Somebody must have made that call. So who was that?
So let me ask you this: the FBI is always saying we're helping, we're here to help you. Why didn't they act in this case? Let's say we don't know about the 5th. Let's go back to September, when a guy who's a blogger says, this kid says he wants to be a professional school shooter. Ron Hosco, who I'm sure you know, who's a great guy, he's trotted out with the FBI talking points, and he says, well, it's First Amendment, it's protected. Hello?
Well, there are some protections you have to work through and around, or
if someone
get stopped
said
by.
I'm gonna kill the president.
I agree, Judge. That if somebody makes a threat, if there's a viable threat in there, and a threat is me sitting across from you, I say I'm going to punch you. You know I can carry that out. I have the capability, and I'm within distance that I can. Now, if I'm calling from Cleveland and you're in Chicago, and I say I'm going to punch you over the phone, it's not a real threat. But somebody says I'm going to be a professional school shooter. It doesn't matter where they are, when that happens, who it is that's saying that.
Find out who it is.
You find out.
Okay, so when the FBI and Hosco come out and say we couldn't figure it out, I found out there were 13 Nicholas Cruzes in the country. Who are they kidding?
It's not an exponential number that you have to worry about. There's going to be a limited number, and at the very least, you say, hey, we ran down the 13 we found, and this is what we came up with.
All right. Do you have confidence in the FBI? Should we have confidence in the FBI with all the screw-ups from San Bernardino, Fort Hood, 9/11, Pulse, Orlando?
Well, I can.
Hostin.
Those things are the tragedies that the FBI maybe should have done more, and a lot of them maybe should have prevented. But I still have confidence in the people that are on the street working the cases.
Yeah, the rank and
I
file.
don't have confidence in the middle management.
Tim Clemente, thanks so much for being with us. And Dr. Ben Carson, legendary coach Lou Holtz are standing by. And next, Donald Trump's former deputy campaign manager, David Bossie, has a lot to say about the FBI and the new details about the Russia investigation. Don't miss it. We'll be back in a moment.
News headquarters, I'm Robert Gray. A coordinated bombing strikes a crowded market in Nigeria Friday. At least 20 people are dead, more than 20 others injured by 3 suicide bombers, all believed to be women. The attack took place in the northern part of the country, just outside the capital. The Islamist extremist group Boko Haram has been known to abduct and indoctrinate young women to use them in these types of attacks. 13 people are dead, more than a dozen others injured in Mexico today. A helicopter carrying government officials crashed while surveying the damage from yesterday's 7.2 magnitude earthquake. There were no reported deaths due to the earthquake, a welcome relief in a nation still on edge after a tumbler killed more than 500 people back in September. I'm Robert Gray. Now back to Justice with Judge Jeanine.
There is no allegation in this indictment that any American was a knowing participant in this illegal activity. There is no allegation in the indictment that the charged conduct altered the outcome of the 2016 election.
And to our other developing story tonight, 13 Russians indicted for meddling in the presidential election. And you just heard Rosenstein say no allegation that it altered the outcome of the election. Joining me now with reaction, former Trump deputy campaign manager David Bossie. All right, David, thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, so you hear the deputy attorney general there who comes out and says it didn't affect the election. So who cares?
Well, the American people clearly care. But look, we now know that the evil empire still exists. That's the one thing. When I was raised as a boy, the evil empire existed. In the 60s, 80s, and 2000s, Russia. They have not changed their stripes at all, Russia. And this guy, Putin, clearly was trying to do one thing. Clearly, this started in this indictment in May of 2014. Clearly, before Donald Trump was a presidential candidate, long before many of the people got into the race. They wanted to sow discord. That's what they did, and it didn't matter who the candidates were. These people were dedicated to disrupt our election, and I blame one person, well, 2 people for this, Barack Obama and James Comey. They were the president and the FBI director for 2 years while this was going on.
And they did nothing.
They did absolutely nothing. As a matter of fact, they didn't warn anyone. They didn't send out the word to Capitol Hill. They didn't have Senate hearings, House hearings to say, this is an emergency, we must take action. Now today, these people want to say on their high horses, look at what President Trump is or isn't doing. No, no, no. You lost your credibility. The dereliction of duty is on them.
Okay. You know, I don't know if you heard this, but what I said to Hogan Gidley, I said, you know, yesterday at 12:35, Rod Rosenstein announces he's going to have a press conference at 1:15. That's like 40 minutes, 40. Why so fast? No one from Russia is here to be arraigned. No one's been arrested. Why? My take is the information came out about the FBI screwing up big time in the shooting at the school, and so now they want to overshadow it with the Russians are meddling in our elections.
Well, you know, I don't know if those 2 things are connected, Judge, but I can say that there was probably something going on that they felt that would become public that they needed to get out in front of.
40 minutes what?
That happens all the time. You know that.
I know. I was a DA.
Right. That's my point.
Who cares?
I've been around the block a few times. That is not out of the normal course of business.
But no one was being arrested. And by the way,
I get that.
Is Russia going to are we going to extradite him from Russia?
You know what? I think this president should demand that those people be extradited.
You think Putin's going to agree to have them brought
But I
here?
think that the American people should see this president saying enough is enough. We're not going to have it. And as a matter of fact, we need to protect. And this is the one thing we're learning. They are already doing this for 2018, 2020. We must have a very robust effort to stop this.
Has the United States ever interfered with the elections in other countries?
You know what? I suspect that we probably have. For our own national security interests, I'm guessing that we've participated in disruptive efforts around the world. And I understand that. But what the Russians have done here, this is dividing the American people. You look at what the Democrats and the left in this country have to, after watching what just happened yesterday with these indictments, have to step back and say, you know what? We're a little hyperventilating over this, over the Russia collusion thing, which now has proven to not be true. There's been no collusion, no corruption.
Are you sure nothing else is coming down the pike, David?
No. Well, I can tell you, as somebody who was at the campaign, Judge, there was no cooperation, collusion, coordination, nothing of the sort. I've said that here in many places as long as I have been asked. There was no Russians in the building. We didn't even eat Russian salad dressing. There was just, it was ridiculous. I can tell you, no, but deadly serious. This is over the top what the left has done to divide this country over these allegations, which are now proven not true.
David Bossie, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and a legendary college football coach, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, teaming up for a great cause. Lou Holtz, Ben Carson, here live to tell you about it next. Welcome back to Justice Live from Washington, D.C. tonight. Two icons, HUD Secretary Dr. Ben Carson and sports icon Lou Holtz, to talk about a new program focusing on young people in the inner cities to help them make better choices to achieve the American dream through sports and community, named the WIN, or What's Important Now program. All right, gentlemen, it's an honor to have you both here tonight. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Secretary. You have a program that you told me about that really was or is the basis of this new WIN program.
Right.
What is it?
Well, it's called the Envision program. And, you know, the Bible says in the book of Proverbs, without a vision, the people perish. And I discovered in talking to a lot of young people, particularly in disadvantaged areas, you say, what do you want to do when you grow up? And you don't get a lot of inspiring choices. And we want to really expose them to the things that they're capable of doing. We also want to establish mentoring. There are a lot of good mentors in our society, but they don't know where to go or how to use that mentoring power. And also, we need a way to marry the need with the resources.
And so you have this program called Envision, and I think we have a full screen that shows the 4 pillars of the program.
Right. Economic empowerment, educational advancement, health and wellness, and leadership and character development, all of which are things that normally occur in a well-functioning, healthy home environment. But that does not necessarily exist for everybody. But as a society, we can create that, we can make that happen, and we can empower people, because our whole ideal now with HUD is not how many people we can get into programs, but how many people we can get out of programs, how many people we can help climb that ladder.
Okay, so now we have this Envision program. We have you, Secretary, a cabinet member, HUD, and then we have the sports icon. No. And we say to ourselves, how can we marry this important program and resources with what you have to offer?
What we're really talking about is getting people to make good choices. Wherever we are, because choice you make, you choose to do drugs, drop out of school, join a gang, get tattooed, you're choosing to have difficulty in life. Now, not only are we talking about maybe a role model for these young people, but getting them to raise their self-image, to believe they can do things. It's not just about bringing a professional athlete in, an NFL or an NBA player to come in and say, hey, look at me. It's to convince them that they can do anything they want if they make good choices. And self-image is so critical in everything you do. And when you raise self-image, then they start looking at positive things, and they start saying positive things about other people as well. And then the whole environment changes. They don't have a role model. They don't have a father in many, many instances. All we want to do in the WIN program was started by a professor at Notre Dame. But everybody wins. The athlete wins, but more importantly, the young people win and the country wins if we can get them to make good choices. And it's our obligation to help these people.
All right. Now, Coach, you are well known for going into the inner city, talking to mothers of young kids who can become famous sports icons themselves, and saying, give me your son, I'll bring you back a man. Give me a sense of that.
Absolutely, because we'll teach him to make good choices. And discipline isn't what you do to somebody, it's what you do for somebody. I would say to him, you get a dog, you allow the dog to do anything it wants, it never has any freedom. You put a choke collar on that sucker, it learns what it can do, and all of a sudden, a year later, you give it all kind of freedom because it learned to make good choices. And I believe this. I don't care where you go. We got to have a better educational system for the people in the inner city. I don't know why people can send their children to a private school, but all of a sudden a minority can who happens to live in public housing. That's not right. That's not fair. But it's getting people to make good choices and believe in them. I had 2 people last year added to the Board of Trustees at Notre Dame. Put in the NFL Hall of Fame, 3 added to Notre Dame coaching staff. All 7 of them are Afro-American. I don't take credit for it. Their parents and them, they learn to make good choices. And more importantly, they learn the vision. I agree with what Doctor says. Having a vision, that's where everything starts, a vision.
Okay, so Doctor, you have this program Envision. All right, how, and the coach says how you're going to marry each other. How do we actually get to the students, to the individuals that you guys want to help?
Well, all of these Envision centers are actually going to be located either within the housing complexes or very close to the places where people are disadvantaged. And it won't necessarily all be in the inner city either, because we have disadvantaged people throughout our society. And we have to recognize that in America we have 330 million people. We have to compete against India and China. They have 4 times as many people, which means we need to develop all of our people. And this is the way we have to start thinking as a nation.
Lou, who are you going to bring into the Envision centers? Once we get the kids in there, who are you going to bring in there?
Well, the first group I'm going to bring in is Lou's Lads. Everybody played for 11 years at Notre Dame, has formed a club. And they...
Lou's what?
Lou's Lads, L-A-D-S.
Lou's Lads.
I didn't come up with that. I didn't. Okay. They gave it to them, but I'll tell you what, they run the food bank program along with Notre Dame Alumni Association in 59 cities in 3 different countries. These are people that are very, very talented, very successful. They would be willing to come in and start being mentors, but also I talked to Jerry Jones. I talked to Robert McNair.
Jerry Jones?
I talked to him for over 20 minutes. His daughter, Charlotte, who's a superstar, is going to get back with me to see about the possibility. Same thing with Mr. McNair with the Houston Texans. I've talked to Byron Spruell, who's president of the NBA, not commissioner. He was one of my captains, so I think I got a little pull with him. But we got to get, and not only that,
so we give them choices.
I want everybody. I would like doctors. I'd like lawyers. Anybody volunteer to come help.
Let's stick with the sports, okay? Stick with what you know, okay? So we're going to teach him to not take a knee?
Oh, we're going to take him to we're going to stand for the flag, and we're going to kneel for the cross.
Dr. Carson?
Well, the important thing is communication. These rooms will have places for people to come together and to discuss things. And, before people get divorced, what do? They stop talking. They stop communicating. Next thing you know, their spouse is the devil incarnate. That's what's happening in our society right now. We need to change that direction quickly, because every society that has done that has destroyed themselves.
I can't tell you how thrilled I am to have you both with this new program, Win. What's important now? Envision, Dr. Carson, Lou Holtz, Lou's Lads. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
All right, my political panel's on deck and ready to go. Captain Charlie Kirk, Chris Han Solo, and Intergalactic Battle. Can't miss it. Thank you so much. Listen to MSNBC's Joe Scarborough, who used the tragedy to compare President Trump to Pontius Pilate.
He's supposed to be man of action. He is letting our children get slaughtered week by week by week, and it will happen again. He's letting Christians that go to church get slaughtered, like Pontius Pilate. Paul Ryan, Donald Trump, they're just washing their hands of it, like Pontius Pilate, letting Christians get slaughtered in pews, letting country fans get slaughtered at concerts.
That one left me speechless. Let's bring in the panel. Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk and Chris Hahn, former aide to Chuck Schumer, syndicated radio host. All right, is he right, Chris?
Well, look, I think we've got a gun culture in this country. We've got a Congress that doesn't want to do anything about it. I suspect that Donald Trump is not as tied to the NRA as Paul Ryan and some of his members in the House and many of the members in the Senate. And I would like to see the president propose sensible gun solutions, because I think that the president could appeal to a part of the country that many progressives who have been searching for this for years won't be able to. And I think that the president understands that something needs to be done. And I'm hoping to God that over the next couple of weeks, he proposes something that's sensible, that can break through and change this gun culture that is killing so many.
So I'll ask the question again. Is Joe Scarborough right? Yes or no? Chris?
I don't think so. I wouldn't compare him to Pontius Pilate.
All right, good. Go ahead, Charlie.
But you know what? If he does nothing, you can.
Yeah, Joe Scarborough is far from being right. Scarborough has just gone farther and farther off the deep end ever since Trump won, because he was on the wrong side of history. He said he's going to lose historically, and all of a sudden now he is comparing the President of the United States to Pontius Pilate. It's astonishing. But going to this comment about gun laws, I always challenge back, well, what exactly is the left's position? Do you want a universal gun confiscation? Do you want handguns to be banned as well? Because if that's really your position, that's the majority of gun deaths in this country. And so if you think our gun laws are actually fostering an environment and a culture that is making us have more gun violence, then why not just ban all guns, if that's the stated position? Because right now, if you look, the majority of gun violence in the country comes from handguns. Of course, that would be foolish, wrong, and completely impossible. So I would love this soundbite of common sense gun reform. I would love to hear exactly what that means, Chris, because that's a talking point of the Democrats. Yet there's very little.
I'll tell you what it means, because I'll tell you what it means if you stop filibustering. So the bottom line is this. We need private insurance on every gun, and we need a registry on every gun. And people who the Florida Department of Children and Families visits, who are troubled and who are finding that they want to buy guns, they should never be buying guns, right? They should never be doing it. But if we had a private insurance system here,
we have background checks.
Wait, Chris, you wanted my solution.
Chris, gun insurance. Charlie, what do you say to that?
Well, look, so you're going to mandate gun insurance for gun owners and firearm manufacturers? I don't think so.
What about the illegal guns?
Behind a right?
Stop, both of
exactly.
We do it for
Chris,
cars.
you want to tell me all the guys in Chicago who belong to gangs are going to say, gee, my gun's illegal, but I'm going to run out and get insurance?
Precisely.
If every gun is registered from the minute it leaves the manufacturer and had to be insured, there'd be less illegal guns on the street. It's simple as that. There are less illegal cars on the street because we know where they are at all times, and people have insurance, and the private sector finds them when they are lost. That's the thing. We need a private sector market solution for guns. It will work. It works with cars, and it'll work with guns.
Go ahead, Chris.
Well,
Charlie,
look, I mean,
I'm sorry.
First of all, that would be completely impossible. We have over 250 million guns in this country, most of whom have not been registered and are owned illegally by guns in our urban cities. Let's see. But we're talking about the massive shooting in Florida, and that would not have prevented the massive shooting. You know what would have prevented it? If the FBI would have done their job. We have enough laws on the books. We do not need Washington, D.C. to pass more onerous gun regulations.
And Children did their job.
Or the FBI,
or
the FBI could actually follow on leads.
Florida did their job.
The FBI was notified
the Florida
twice
Department
and did
of Family and Children visited this guy a year and a half ago, and they knew he was wanting to buy guns, and they said in their report they didn't know what he wanted them for.
Chris, but the FBI got a tip 5 weeks before saying all of this stuff, and they did nothing.
Yeah, and that's horrible too, Judge. I'm not giving them a pass on that, and nobody should. But let's remember there were lots of warning signs here missed by lots of agencies.
Okay, except the most specific to the FBI. Charlie, let me ask you a question. The president tweeted, just like they don't want to solve the DACA problem, why didn't the Democrats pass gun control legislation when they had the president, the House, and the Senate during the Obama administration? Because they didn't want to, and now they just talk. What do you say?
Well, and I agree with that for the most part. I mean, they did have control of all three chambers. I mean, thankfully, we were able to block it, in 2009 and 2010. They did try their best. But look, the answer is not more federal gun legislation. The majority of gun deaths in this country are death by suicide and gang-related deaths in urban areas with handguns. We have a culture problem in this country that has stemmed from failing public schools and bad government programs. This idea that people are just getting gunned down in the street in record numbers because everyone's having a machine gun, which, by the way, is illegal, is completely wrong, is adverse to reality.
We have a gun culture in this country that is getting out of control. You combine that with a mental health problem that's not being addressed, and we are at a place where we're going to see more and more of these mass shootings, and it is horrible, and something needs to be done. And I'm hoping that President Trump, who should have no real loyalty to the NRA, and listen, the reason why the Democratic Congress didn't pass it when they had a chance, because the NRA owned a few of them too. It's time for this president to work and act on this immediately.
What about the Second Amendment, Chris?
Well, look, no amendment is absolute. Even Justice Scalia said that that amendment could have restrictions as well. Justice Scalia wrote that, and I think Ronald Reagan said that as well. So it's time for that amendment not to be treated like any other, like to be treated like every other amendment and have reasonable restrictions.
Charlie Kirk, 10 seconds.
Yeah, already has reasonable restrictions. We have the Brady bill. We have national federal background checks. We've closed all these loopholes in the 80s and 90s, not to mention we have waiting periods in a lot of states. This idea that we have no federal gun legislation is just wrong. Just wrong. Enforce the law in the books.
The NRA owns too many politicians, and it probably owns your organization.
Oh, stop it. We'll be right back.
Candace, 2 minutes.